ahead and start. Awesome. Okay. So first and foremost, welcome to this kind of impromptu, if you will, meeting here on, or I should say, class, more specifically on the Jumper community page. I'm sure we'll get a few more stragglers coming in. I know usually once we actually officially get started and we're going, things typically will start to pick up a little bit. It just depends on how many people, I guess, are up at this time as well, whether you're East Coast or later on, depending on region. So, kind of going off of the announcement channel, uh, right? I'll kind of start top down, and as I was writing this up, I thought to myself, what's a good kind of starting point to begin with, for people that one haven't done jumping too much, or if they're just kind of newer to the game, and also at the same time trying to think about, what is a good way to explain to people, what the actual benefits are of jumping. And so we'll kind of start off there a little bit, and I'll keep this one brief before we move on to the next point. But I do think it can be really important to talk about, origin, so to speak, on why is it exactly, why do we jump? Why do people continue to do it? And really, what is the overall benefit, if you will, right? What's the value, right? The purpose, if you will, in actually jumping? Why not just start an account in an old server? Why not just go and start an account in a new kingdom and just play it out? And so again, we're going to touch on a few of those points. Let me first start off with, what is the origin, if you will, right? Why was jumping really, at least to best guess and approximation, started? And so when I look back on the history for jumping, some of the earliest times back when, just after global release for Rock and a couple other kingdom builders that are, of course, a little older as well, some of the ideas really came about for jumping due to recognizing that when you go into a kingdom where you're just doing it solo, there's a level of uncertainty that comes with what your expectations can be and would be, along with what can you get out of it. An example would be if you're a player and you just started playing Rise of Kingdoms, and I would imagine just like I did and others did, your first experience is extremely important because it's going to shape how you view, for the most part, any game that you play. And so, more often than not, players may opt out or not choose to educate or inform themselves on exactly, is this the only way I can start? Are there other things I can do? If I never would have joined, I know for myself, right, if I never would have joined the Rock
Yes.
Discord, then I never would have even had an idea on that jumping existed. I would have never even known about it. And I would imagine for any of us that started playing similarly, you may have had varying levels of experiences and things that maybe you noticed that you just weren't in favor of, or you just didn't understand because you just started. So I think those things are important to recognize on kind of how jumping came about because of the fact that players just didn't know enough in the beginning and were even able to consider or not, just what jumping was and what it is. Just even more so that the option was there for them to do so. Along with some of the challenges that come along with, how you start off in the beginning. As I said, you could load into the game and the kingdom you get into, you start playing, you don't even make a new account, you're just playing from that brand new kingdom because you just downloaded the game, but you don't know if that kingdom just started or if it's a day or two old. Could be war breaks out early, right? You're playing for a week or two, and all of a sudden you're in a province, and you got two alliances that are fighting at each other, and that can be a turnoff for players. That's something that can happen. However, having good information on, why it's happening, knowing that you could leave the alliance to join another one, you could leave that province and join another province, just knowing, again, kind of knowing is almost half the battle, right? Just having the information, so that way, one, as a new player, you can recognize that you have options, and then two, if you do decide to start realizing or even figuring out more information to then know that jumping is a thing, right? It can really broaden your horizons, if you will, on just feeling more comfortable and confident because you have options and you're not just stuck, so to speak. So again, jumping, in my opinion, really came from, at least again, what I have seen through history, if you will, and time here, is that it really came about because players wanted to get a better start for themselves outside of being able to get general boosts and more resources and just all around from the beginning of why you would do it in the first place to get that head start when you land. A lot of times people are jumping to try and just get an overall better experience for themselves, right? Where the kingdom doesn't end up in war, people don't end up fighting, there's not a lot of drama that's happening, and they're able to hopefully play their account as much as they can in an environment that they would enjoy playing in. So those are some of the big reasons on, I think, why jumping really started, was the idea of, and you often hear this word being used, right? The idea of like doing a restart, right? And the again, the main reason behind that is because, like I said, people really want to try and just be able to play in a better space, a better environment than the one they were in before, right? In whatever capacity that may be. Okay, now let us move on. Let me just check this real quick. It's the 17th, right? It is the 17th. Awesome. Okay. So then let's go to, right, as a new player, right, would you want to join an older kingdom or a newer kingdom, right? Or make a jumper, right? So I think this is a very interesting topic because there are quite a few moving pieces here on this one, where it's funny because I talk about this in another game as well, that I play, which is just another kingdom builder, and I often debate the idea behind, why would you want to, would you rather, more so, start in an older kingdom or do a jumper? And so I think one of the most fascinating things about it is that oftentimes you'll hear people say, well, I want to start over, or sorry, like I want to start over, or I want to be a part of a kingdom from the beginning. And oftentimes when you're thinking about a player who wants to kind of get not only a full experience, but at the same time, most players are looking to try and level their accounts up as much as they can. And when you think about it like that, starting off in an older kingdom, right, where you're able to take advantage of a max tech shell, right, where you can get into an alliance that has max technology, even if they're not a top alliance. Right, that'll help you as an individual player progress a lot faster. Sometimes if you join an older kingdom that's already established, they might kind of already be past any potential war phases, so you don't necessarily have to worry about getting attacked. Right, you might also be able to get access to certain structures as well, depending on what that alliance or shell has access to. So sometimes just basically going to an older kingdom that is established or maybe offers certain benefits to new players, that can help you level up and progress your account a lot faster than if you go in a new kingdom or a new kingdom start. So there's pros and cons to it, right? And you can either play in that kingdom or you just use the kingdom as kind of a booster kingdom, and then you eventually migrate out and you go to a kingdom in which you'd like to play. Maybe something that's newer, where your power isn't so much lower than the average there in an older. So I think those are some of the pros there on going to an older. However, when it comes to starting over and kind of doing jumps, the idea there is really, do I want, let me see, I can't type 837, can't verify, let's see here, oops, sorry, I'm just reading some of these here, Razor, oh, never mind, I guess some people are getting verified now, Cruel, Magnesium. Okay, cool. Maybe it should be fixed. Fixed. We'll ask. So sorry, just making sure I can take a look here. Let's see here. Good now. Ted, Mike says. Well, we will definitely touch on that as well from what Mike said there on the community being dead. I actually don't think it is at all. But anyways, to finish off that last point is that when we're looking at when we're looking at doing a jumper, right? The other side of it is that if you go into an Ultra Kingdom, right, you're most of the time going to be do it by yourself. As humans being kind of social habitual creatures. Um, oh, sweet, cool, awesome, cool. Sorry, I'm just reading an update for a promotion, so at least it works. So we'll see if it goes through. Moved on to the next round. With that being said, right. So I think the other side is that as you're going through when you're going through the jumping process with a group, as us being kind of social creatures of habit, we enjoy playing with a lot of people, right? Or we enjoy being a part of a community. So there's that aspect of it, is that may outweigh you wanting to go to an older kingdom. In addition to that, you don't necessarily get to play or start the game from beginning to end, right? So you'll miss some KVKs, you'll miss the chronicles, you'll miss the kind of figuring it out on who's going to advance to what zones, right? Really kind of playing the game out from day one. And a lot of people like to do that. So I think that's why you have such a huge love of people that are interested and engaged to do jumpers, along with even many veterans who just have been playing in an older kingdom for a really long time. I'll often hear that people just want to restart so they can kind of feel that, starting kingdom rush again, or just get that feeling. And that's another reason why you'll end up having people that want to do it. So those just kind of go through the pros and cons of that. Before I go to the next point, which is going to be talking about, is jumping still worth it after the 1.0.57 Museum of Wonders update, which is the latest one, and I'll probably do a little bit of a deep dive there. Before we do touch on that, any questions so far from anyone on anything I've touched on? And again, you can type in the jumper chat. You can type in jumper chat, or if you want to come on voice and ask something, you're more than welcome to. Let me, one sec, guys. Let me just grab something. All right. I don't know if I can post videos, but I'm gonna try and bracket it off. Sorry, I'm just typing right now. Fruition. All right. So sorry, I just wanted to reply to Mike there in chat. Okay. So the next thing here I'll touch on is for anyone who kind of feels that jumping is dead at any point. There is, what I will say is that jumping definitely is not dead at all. I made a video touching on this on my channel. I actually don't think that jumping will probably ever die. Unless, really at all. even you have to think about it. Even if they, let's say they removed the entire beginner teleportation altogether, there was just no way that people would be able to go start in one kingdom and then go to another. Let's just say they remove the scroll, or I think as some people call it now, the donkey. So if they removed that, right, and you essentially had to start out in a new kingdom just like everyone else did, you could still form a group and go there, right? You would basically just do a day one jump instead of you doing a jump from an older kingdom and using those 9 days or so to, 9 days or so to work on those things. So, I think even if, and what's funny is I gave an example of me doing this in another kingdom builder from an older kingdom that was still in one of the beta servers. And we were able to go in there day one with, again, no prep at all. And that kingdom was on trajectory to be the number one strongest kingdom in the game. It ended up doing so and being that for a couple months that it lasted there. So again, it's something that isn't really dependent on getting the extra resources or the head start. There's actually a lot of creative ways that you can jump, even if they remove it completely over time, and you just have to start off from day one. Right? I don't think it's going to die. Really, what we're seeing is just a little bit nerfing of removing some resources and additional materials that you can get before you jump. Right, the biggest changes is really just now that you have to clear fog because you have to start off in a prep season server where it's basically kind of like doing when you used to be able to do two jumps, right? You'd start off in a kingdom that had fog uncleared. You'd go to the second kingdom, you'd have to clear fog, and then you'd go to the third kingdom and clear fog again. The only difference is now is because you can only jump once, you'll actually have more time available to you to clear fog when you go into the first kingdom that's in a prep season. Because before, you weren't really able to do that, right? You wouldn't have as much time, specifically. You'd start off in a kingdom that had fog cleared, but you'd be there for, 1-2 days, give or take. And then you'd go to your second kingdom, and then you'd have, 1 or 2 less days than you would now to work on clearing fog. So you actually have a little bit more time allotted to you now when it comes to being in the first kingdom, which is really nice. However, again, the clearing of the fog is probably the one downside because, again, it just takes a little more time, a little more work. You're not going to be able to get those early caves and do a lot of the early villages like you could before. So, again, those are the biggest things. It's just now you have to clear fog in your first kingdom. And then two, right, you have to make sure that you jump before EOTC starts, which is even the crusade for prior to KVK 1 starting. So really, I mean, what probably is going to end up happening is you'll just see people that are trying to time that out, right? So they're timing out, maybe a day before EOTC starts, or maybe something around the middle kind of end, leading up to when EOTC starts in a prep season kingdom, and then they'll end up jumping from there. That's kind of where my mindset is at. For groups in general, when I'm just kind of viewing how they're going to adapt to what's happening. But it's still very doable, right? I mean, no matter what, if you're getting a head start or not in your account, I personally just don't really think it matters at the end of the day. You can still jump from day one. So it's one of those things where, I think it's really good to view how you go about working on those things because it can be really fantastic when you think about the opportunities that you'll have, right, to get into those areas. All right, so I think that touches on the excuse me. That touches on is jumping still worth it? Any questions there that anyone may have? I'll definitely be reading up on Jumper Chat. Not sure if anyone does have any that they may specifically for that one. Maybe if you just feel jumping really isn't worth it, if you have another question you'd like to ask, again, you're more than welcome to. Sorry, let me see here. Hang on, I'm just reading Jumper Chat real quick. Let me see. Jake asked about 27. Was 2777 a success? Also, good question. Good question. I think, one of the good things about being, well, I don't know if I should say good things, but I think anytime you're going to be leading, whether you're someone who's in management for a project, right? If you're an officer, you're a lead. If you're an R6, so to speak, or a project manager like myself, I think it's important to try and answer the hard questions, right? You're not always going to get easy questions at the end of the day for those that may view it one way or another. I think when you look at a project in its entirety to value out if something is successful or not, I think the important thing to note is that, when you're doing a jump project, your project phase is really up until you get to the start of a kingdom. So if you look at any project that's being promoted right now, that project in their jumper phase is essentially before they land there in the final kingdom on day one. Once they do, your project essentially kind of has now transitioned from being a jump project to, okay, now you're there in the kingdom. Right now it's just your group, right, or your family, if you will. And, every project has a vision that they want to try and see come to fruition, right? Come to be successful. Whether or not the vision itself does not define whether a project is successful or not. I think something that defines a project being successful or not is the core of that group, is the core of that project still in a kingdom, right? And are they still going down a path, right? I think that's when you look at the success of a kingdom versus, right, did the vision for a project be able to come to fruition or not? If you look at the example of 2777, I had a vision for that project, and people that joined the group supposedly believed in that vision. Unfortunately, when you look at how management decided to go in a different direction, they opted for something different. I don't think anyone can really control those things. However, again, I don't think we could really define if 2777 is a success or not because we just don't know yet. But if you're going to claim that it is not a success, then you would be saying that the group and the people that are still there remaining would be unsuccessful, right? You would basically be having to state that their efforts right now have led to the kingdom not being successful, and that's just not true. Really, I think the type of question that you're trying to ask, or is just more appropriate, is, was my vision able to be brought to fruition? For a period of time, I'd say a brief period of time it was. Unfortunately, given that the leads there decided to all of a sudden go in a different route based on what they initially agreed on. Unfortunately, let me see what's happening here, sweetie.
No, this.
Oh, there you go.
No, Daddy.
You want to go back?
No.
Okay, what would you like? Which one? Well, here you go.
No.
What is it?
No.
Is this what you're watching?
No.
Well, what are you watching? Oh, you want to go there? Wait, here, watch. You have to do this. See? There you go. Yep. Go ahead. You gotta hold it.
Daddy.
What is it?
What's this? This.
Here. Right here. You want other videos? Here you go.
No.
Okay. Well, here, you gotta go click it.
It's a bird.
Go ahead.
Bird.
Wait, let me see. Oh, hang on.
It's not.
I'm not sure, sweetie. It is not being clicked on currently. Let's see here. Okay, here. Try going back.
Oh, Daddy, hold back.
I don't know where it is. You have to show me. Yeah. Okay, you gotta hold it.
Daddy.
Okay, I'll put it down here. All right. Sorry about that. Let me come back. Will my daughter be in the next project? Yeah, that'd be great. Sorry. Yeah. Let me finish there. Yeah. So, like I said, I think to summarize that shortly, I think, like I said, the project, or I should say, the kingdom itself, doesn't really know if it's going to be successful or not because it hasn't really got to a point to figure that out. So they're kind of still in process to answer the question. But I think more specifically what that individual was trying to ask was more about was more about the vision that I had for it. Warsy said, in my opinion, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think overall, I would say, I mean, if you looked at, I mean, there's a lot of ways to define, how a kingdom succeeds, right? You can say that, well, okay, this kingdom has, great activity. They have, great alliance power, right? A lot of people that are really participating and engaging. And I think that if you define a kingdom as success, I think that if you define a kingdom as being successful in that way, that is one way to view it. If your kingdom has great activity, you have great player retention, you have a lot of active alliances, you have a lot of player engagement, that in itself is kind of what almost every kingdom's looking for. So I think if you look at it from that approach, then yeah, I would say 2777 is hugely successful, especially when you compare the activity between the other kingdoms on the continent, as we did. And I'm sure that can be, more or less said for other projects as well, right? You may have great activity, great player retention. You look at the other 7 kingdoms on the continent and you compare their power, alliance power, with yours. You look at their top 10 alliance power, right? There's a lot of things that you can take away from that. However, I think the vision that sometimes project leads or just leaders have in a project sometimes may not come to fruition. But I don't think that defines whether a project succeeds or a kingdom will succeed or not. Unfortunately, sometimes, haters have very limited viewpoints on, what is it? Wait. You want to watch this? Hang on, stop, wait. Let me do this, hang on. Oh, why are you're trying to download things? Let's see, here we go. I'm not sure, sweetie. I don't think it's working. Oh, hang on. You gotta wait, okay? See? Hang on, wait. It's downloading, so you have to wait, okay? Here, once that finishes, then you can do it, okay? You just have to wait. There you go, a little patience. Anyways, so that kind of briefly touches on that. Let me, if I can, we can move on to the next one. Unless I see another question typed out, then we will answer that. Let me just do this, and then we will restart. Or I should say, move on to the next one. All right, awesome. I think I should be good here. Sorry, just loading up for the day, if you will. Having to multitask a lot. Okay, sweet. So, let's come back and moving on. Oops, let me see. Ooh, under okay. All right. So where was I on the last one here? So we had point 3, which was, is jumping still worth it? The next one is why do a jump group? What is the true purpose of jumper groups and jumping? So I think this is a really good topic when we look at what is the true purpose behind it. So overall you have kind of going back to what I was saying, and this is briefly related or loosely I should say involved with one of the previous topics, which is really the main purpose of jumping is to try and get control. Right, you're trying to establish your presence in a new kingdom, right? So you have either majority, like you're able to either have majority control or kind of work your way to that. And again, the word control really is kind of more loose here, because the idea really isn't about having it be your way or our way or the highway. It's really more about trying to have majority presence, so that way you're able to support the kingdom in a way that will allow for you and your group to see your vision, right? The way you want to manage the kingdom. Being able to try to come to fruition, right? Where you can really get that going. And that more so is the hope, right? Is that you're trying to do a project so you can get to that outcome. And you can find some hope, some level of working on what it is you've promised your group that you're going to do, right? Maybe you said we're going to have 5 alliances in Zone 3. Maybe you said we're going to have free-for-all, kill events. Maybe you said, hey, well, when MGEs come around, we're just going to do nothing but fixed MGEs, right? Whatever it may be, right? Those are things that, depending on the group you're joining, right, they might have different views and different outlooks on how to do that. Maybe they just have different management structures. And it's really about trying to, one, find a group that fits what you're looking for, but at the same time, knowing that that's what that group is going to try and do in Final Kingdom. So, that's really what the hope is for doing projects. That's one of the reasons why, you have so many projects that spend so much time recruiting, gathering new players, right? Trying to make sure that they're going to be able to give them a really good introduction to the game. And then hopefully be able to play in a kingdom for a very long time. Unfortunately, it seems like it's more of a low percentage play, at least thus far, for when it comes to those kind of working out, for a long period of time. All right, let's go to, if I can, to the next one here, which is how there can be different groups and different outlooks and plans. So we did touch on this a little bit that I mentioned in my last point. However, it goes a little deeper than that. I think it's really important that players figure out, or I shouldn't say figure out, but just come to know that there are a lot of groups, a lot of jumper groups out there, and not all of them are going to be managed the same way. They're not all going to want the same thing. So the biggest piece of advice I could give to any and every player is to make sure that you are taking time out of your day to join a bunch of groups, right? Don't just go join one group. Join many groups and read through what they have to offer, because that will help you as a player going forward to then compare, right? Hang out in those groups for a week or two. Right? Look at what announcements they're posting. Look at what information they have provided. Look at how the leaders or the project managers are engaging. Right? Really just do some assessment. Right? Figure out what group may be good for you. Because if you're a new player, you're not necessarily going to know the intricacies. You're not going to know all the game knowledge and details. But what you can figure out, and what you are able to do even before any of that starts, is you can compare how structured, how organized, how professional or not certain groups are. And that's something you can apply from just your real world, knowledge and assessment. So I think that's really important to do. Let's see here. Okay, let me see if there's any questions there on that one, if anyone may. And if not, I will move on to the next point. Okay. So let's move on to the next one, which is best practices for jumpers and jumper groups. Right. I think this is one of the best things that I think players can do is just try to really accumulate good resources. And thankfully here on the jumper community server, there's actually quite a few, right? And you can find those by just kind of going to Jump Guide, Jumping Tools, which is right below this channel, and you can find out a lot of those things. Outside of a few of the common denominators I've mentioned so far for players, I think when it comes to groups, right, there's not a lot of resources out there when it comes to, how to really figure out how to be kind of the best player, the best project, right, that you can be. Now, there are some videos I've done, right? So if you go to, for example, if you do go to the Jump Guide channel here on this server, you can see Raya had posted kind of foundational content for jumpers, right? So this is something that these are basically my videos that I put out and had organized. So if you're looking to be a player and you want to kind of figure out what it takes to be a player, managing, right, there's a complete walkthrough guide I've done for how to jump. Might have to update it now, even though most of it's still relevant, but might have to update it after the update. And then you have good resources for if you want to make your own project, right, that kind of talk about how to do that, right, how to go about everything from the idea of creating a project up until landing in a kingdom up until Zone 3, and you're kind of prepping for your first KVK1. And then you'll find managing pieces of content. So if you're looking to be, how can you be a contributing player, a member for your alliance? Do you want to lead an alliance? Do you want to be an officer for an alliance? A lot of great resources there. So definitely I think that's something to not go kind of unreserved, so to speak. Again, there's a lot of great stuff there that players will be able to find out. So I just think it's really important to take a look at those things when you are coming into jumping, to try and find really good resources. And there's just not there's not an abundance of resources when it comes to jumping. At least I should say, outside of a few others and then myself, who have really focused a good portion of beginning content on jumping. But I also think there's a lot of good. I think there's a lot of good content, and can be more good content out there when it comes to kind of all the managing aspects and really everything outside of just kind of leveling your account up and doing well in events. Okay, and then the next point here is bigger the group actually the better? So my view on this is pretty simple. I think when it comes to managing the groups themselves, and you're viewing right. I think when you're looking at those things, having a bigger group, in my opinion, is always better. If you can have, obviously there's limitations now because you can't necessarily have a lot of people that are right. You can't have 1,000 people that are trying to jump or to make it somewhere. However, right, you can have a couple hundred, and I think that is easily doable when you think about just the amount of time you would spend recruiting up until you start. And if you can have a lot more players in the group, knowing that you're going to have a good amount of drop off, right? If you have 1,000 players that you've recruited, you may end up having, 500, give or take, 500, 600, maybe that'll actually join. So, I think kind of doing 50% or 1-to-2 ratios for your margins on how many players will actually convert to Final Kingdom after they end up joining your project is really important to take into account. So I like to kind of view it as like 1 for every 2, right? So if I have 500 people that have joined the project, I can estimate 250 of those people are probably going to end up coming to Final Kingdom. I think that's a really good, healthy estimate. And if you get a little more than that, fantastic. But I think that's a good kind of plus minus to operate in. The reason why I say the bigger group is better is because usually the more players you have, the more alliances you can fill or you can make. And usually that allows for you to branch out into up to all the provinces, if not more, for Zone 1. And that can help a lot when it comes to kind of extending your reach and your presence within a kingdom. The next one here is going to be... let me see if there are any questions there. I know I just kind of went through that one a little quick. Ooh. Levin said yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, Morrissey said yes. All right. Let me go back up here and see. Oh, let me see here. Someone said they couldn't. There are a lot of invites here. Maybe I never created a... we'll do this. I actually thought I had made a forever invite, but maybe I didn't. Let's do this here. Sorry, folks, one sec. I think someone just told me that the link may not be working. So I'm just posting a new one here. Okay, awesome. All right, so let me come back. So the next one here is going to be managing projects and how important structure is. So I think managing projects is really a skill in its shortest and easiest form. It is something that I think is extremely important when it comes to how we manage a project and kind of almost managing a kingdom in its entirety. There's not really a lot of content, if not almost none, out there on how to do a lot of these things. I do have some pieces of content on this, but still not enough to where I would really, as much as I would like to, that I still need to produce. Though when it comes to managing projects, I think the structure that you have is important because some of the biggest things that factor into how well a project is going to be managed is right. How good is your communication? How well do you communicate top down and then bottom up? And that could be from your leadership, your council, to your officers, to your members, and then vice versa, right? From those members on up. And right, how transparent are you with some communication? How often do you communicate with people? Understanding that players will only ever read things right when they are publicized or when they're announced, right? So, and then when you think about your management structure for how do you go about operating? What's your hierarchy, right, in your group? How are decisions made? Right? How is that information that people already knew up front, right? So they're obviously signing up to be a part of what you're building. All of these types of things that go into how you structure your project is vitally important. And so my biggest piece of advice there is make sure you have a good plan, you have these things written out, and that they're public to everyone. So that way people know what to expect. And then if they still decide to join, there's a higher chance that they're joining with good intentions, right, rather than ill intentions. And then the next one is why joining multiple groups is the best thing to do as a player. I touched on this before a little bit, but the main one is, like I said, just to do comparisons, right? Join a bunch of groups and figure out which ones are good for you, right? Pay attention to what they do, what they don't do. But I always advise people joining as many projects as they can because it can really help out a lot in the end. Next one here is what resources, and I will say the last thing I'm going to mention there as well, because I didn't mention this before, is sometimes you can even join multiple projects, even if you start off as a free-to-play. And you join one, and then you wait 2 more weeks, and you join another, right? And you're basically just kind of playing the odds of hoping that one project will work out versus the other. That's something I've seen a couple people do as well, right? So they're maximizing their time. They're not just spending. I've seen someone start a new account in 4 projects, and they picked, I think, the third one it was at the time, because that one, based on the starts, or what they did is they played. I had another person actually who played, I think, 3 or 4 accounts at the same time because they were joining 3 or 4 different projects and playing at the same time, and they were just going to stay with the one that had the highest chances of success. Right after a week or 2 had gone by, they made a decision. I actually think that's a great idea too as well. All right, so let me see here. That covers that. I think I have 2 more here. Any questions on those from what I just covered so far? And if not, I'll move on to the last 2 here. Or really, I should say the last point. Okay. Worsey said no. All right, thanks, Worsey. All right, so next one here is what resources should you watch or consume as a new player jump, right? I did touch on this a little bit before. However, I think if you look at the jump guide channel, which is right below this voice channel under the jumping tools category, there's a channel called Jump Guide. I think that's a great place to start. There's a lot of really good stuff there, even though I know the bottom post, not to toot my own horn, but there's a lot of good resources I've put out specifically that cover jumping in a lot of areas that I think is just great to view and check out for those that haven't yet, along with a few more pieces of material above those as well that this community has put on. So definitely a big shout out to Raya, the group here, I think Trex, and a few others that work on this tirelessly. I think there's another person here, Physician, there we go, Physician's another admin too. Okay, and then kind of getting to the last part here, which is we're pretty much done. I'm actually shocked this is under an hour. But sometimes that happens, if there's just not a lot that maybe join. This is, again, kind of an impromptu meeting, so only had about a 12-hour advance notice. But with that being said, let me open the floor up, right? And again, if there's some maybe there's questions or not, but I just want to give that opportunity. So if anyone has any questions now that they want to ask on anything that I've covered or touched on, or even something I didn't, right, please feel free. If you want to type something up in Jumper Chat, if you want to come on voice, you're more than welcome to. And I'll just leave that up for about a minute. Looks like a few more people ended up joining. Right now, if you're just joining, we're pretty much just in the kind of open floor Q&A portion of I guess the session slash class. So if anyone, again, if anyone new joining, if you guys have a question or something you want to ask from anything that was touched on or pointed out in the outline for today, or even if it's something else that just has to do with jumping, you're more than welcome to. We're kind of here, at least at the last topic, which is just our open floor Q&A, because we have gone through each of the points already. But if anyone new that has joined, if you do have a question you want to ask in Jumper Chat, if you want to come on voice, you're more than welcome to as well. Young says. Oh, let me mess around with some of this stuff. I don't even know why they need to do it this way. I can just do this. Okay. Just make sure I have this. Alright, I think we're good there. Alright. Again, really happy to come on, and I know we ended up having, I think, about 12 or 13 at peak, so. And I also know that not everyone has access to the announcement channels as well. I think that's just limited to the people that have verified. Along with, I think, at times, us being a little bit earlier in the morning, depending on how many people we're going to end up getting, of course. But no matter what, I mean, even if it was only 2 or 3 people, right, I would still always give the same, quality level of presentation, and making sure that I do, touch on as many things as I can, based on the amount of people that we have in attendance and the amount of questions and engagement that we're getting throughout. Well, with all of that, I am going to go ahead and just stop the recording here so I can go ahead and